Hello, fellow kinda critics, and Into the Spider-Verse is one of the best Spider-Man movies out there. Not that there's too much to do bad with the character, but this is Sony we're talking about. But a lot of possible mishaps in the production could have really hurt this movie. With over 5 or 6 plot threads all going at once, lots of complicated mythos to establish, and a sense of direction with multiple writers and directors, this could have been a disappointing mess. Luckily, Sony was able to get the best team money can buy and slap on a more intentional work of art rather than a commercial with half-assed productions. With Phil Lord and some of the team from the Lego Movie, as well as other underrated animation films, we get a clear picture of a character that has garnered mixed results in the comic fandom of the Marvel Ultimate series, being given their first introduction to a general audience. Miles Morales must take on the mantle of Spider-Man and must save his New York from Kingpin, whose reality-destroying machine has transported several Spider-Men from other alternate universes into his own. As otherworldly and fantastical the idea feels, which has been adapted through multiple comics for years, the film simplifies much of the narrative and somehow keeps the plot and character development of Miles, voiced by Shameik Moore, as the main focus, while the other cooler stuff that could have easily taken the focus off Miles sits in the background or is incorporated to create the foil and inner conflict of expectations that Miles has to deal with from the beginning. This script is very laser focused on making this work, which I think was the best decision that could have been made, especially since Spider-Man to most people stops at Peter Parker. And yet here we get this fresh, new perspective of a kid dragged into an unreal situation while also dealing with the reality of going to a more elitist school, parents, his estranged uncle, and the struggle of being the hero the entire city needs. I think much of how that narrative is kept entertaining or different is because of how the animation, which was practically mocked by some of the internet, including me, at the release of the first trailer last year, the entire personality and execution that feels like a comic book but interprets everyone's separate universe with a different animation style. Like we get the cartoonish Spider-Ham that has rounder outlines and brighter colors, mixing in with the 1930s Spider-Noir man, who has a more grittier look and is black and white. The action always felt smooth and always had some kind of visual gimmick that does a great job in capturing each character's sense of abilities, as well as creating that emotion that becomes more dramatic and integral to each plot point. Every minute could have easily been overstuffed with Spider-Man nostalgia and that self-referential style that Phil Lord is used to, but I could feel that it was only peppered in at appropriate points while still driving an emotional and almost too real understanding of Miles. He's not the everyday kid archetype that serves as the fill-in for children or even adults. Instead, he's a more realistic and almost stark contrast as a protagonist with hundreds of insecurities and problems that many face when considering their own future as a person. Not to mention that he's not just a mere echo of Peter Parker, as he lacks the scientific intellect that he has, but is social, comfortable in his own skin for the most part, and has a more creative intelligence that is consistent throughout the whole film. What's even better is how it never pulls back any punches for a kids movie, a PG kids movie for that matter, as we see death very early in the movie, as well as a very dark interpretation of Kingpin's origin story that only needed less than 5 minutes to get people to understand his motivations. And they did this by showing us, not telling the audience. But with that being said, I did dig the quick minute origin stories of each Spider-Man, and I feel like this was just a sneaky way of getting people to see their eventual spin-off film. No surprise here because this is Sony we're talking about. I feel like Into the Spider-Verse pulled a big Rango by not creating an easy animated film to follow or feel more appropriate for most children, and yet it was able to structure all those fun ideas into something that was a great message for the youth, as well as a great catharsis for many adults. The nostalgia never felt forced, and the story was executed extremely well with its unique animation style, and I think all the risks they took were worth it, because Into the Spider-Verse gets 6 out of 6 stars for me.